So when we enter into the duodenum, we stretch the duodenum. We stretch the duodenum. So that's going to be another distension reflex. So food entering the duodenum stretches the duodenum. So this leads to an enteric reflex again, an enteric reflex. This reflex shuts down gastric secretion. So it inhibits parasympathetic stimulation to the stomach. So stretching of the duodenum inhibits parasympathetic stimulation to the stomach. Which we had already started to inhibit by doing exactly that same thing in the pylorus, right? This is just the same story again, but in the duodenum. The stretching of the duodenum activates the endocrine cells of the duodenum. Stretching of the duodenum activates the endocrine cells of the duodenum. So we have enteroendocrine cells in the duodenum, just like we have in the stomach. Except these guys secrete different hormones. The duodenal endocrine cells secrete secretin and cholecystokinin. So if you don't want to write cholecystokinin, just write CCK. Okay, just write CCK. Now we're going to talk about what secretin and CCK do. Let's talk about their common function first. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just real quick. The duodenum stretching activates the endocrine cells in the duodenum and...
To secrete secretin and CCK.
Thank you.
Okay. Now secretin and CCK, they work in a negative feedback mechanism to completely shut off gastrin and histamine secretion in the stomach. So once we start producing secretin and CCK, that completely inhibits histamine and gastrin from the stomach. So now we've pretty much shut off stomach secretion completely. Okay? So that's their inhibitory role. Okay. Now both CCK and secretin will stimulate the pancreas and the liver and gallbladder. Okay, both of those hormones will secrete both of those organs. So, secretin and CCK stimulate the liver and gallbladder, which function together as a unit, and the pancreas. But the relative amounts that they will stimulate those two organs differs. So, for instance, CCK very, very strongly stimulates bile production and release from the liver and gallbladder. So CCK, again, cholecystokinin, right? Chole is the root that we use for the gallbladder. So CCK stimulates gallbladder contraction. CCK stimulates gallbladder contraction. And bile release from the liver and gallbladder. Okay. So where's that bile go? Goes into the duodenum, right? Through the common bile duct. Now it's chyme coming into the small intestine that triggers this release by the distension. Okay. But it'll change a little bit depending on the contents of the chyme. Okay? If the chyme is very, very protein rich and very fat rich, you get a lot of CCK produced. You get a lot of cholecystokinin. You get a lot of protein and a lot of fat in the chyme. On the other hand, if you have a lot of carbohydrate and it's very acidic, then you get more secretin produced. Okay? Carbohydrate-rich acidic chyme. Of course, that's going to vary based on what you ate. So if I eat a cheeseburger and fries, I'm going to get a lot more CCK produced. If I eat an apple and a Pepsi, I'm gonna get a lot more secretin. Okay? But you're gonna get both all the time.
CCK is.
Cholecystokinin.
It's-
Protein and fat. That's CCK. Now, secretin acts on the pancreas. Its primary target is the pancreas to stimulate pancreatic secretion. Okay. The pancreas's main secretory product is bicarbonate. The pancreas's main secretory product is bicarbonate. So here you can make the connection. Okay? You've got a lot of acidic chyme coming into the duodenum. That's why we need a lot of pancreatic secretion to neutralize that acidic chyme. CCK also stimulates the pancreas, but just not to as great an extent as secretin. Likewise, secretin will also stimulate the gallbladder, but just not as much as CCK. Okay? So the two roles of CCK and secretin, the one is the negative feedback mechanism to shut down gastrin and histamine release from the stomach, to turn that off. Okay? And then CCK primarily to stimulate the gallbladder to contract and for bile release. And secretin primarily to trigger the pancreas to contract and inject pancreatic juice containing a lot of bicarbonate. Go ahead.
Do you say secretion was for the digestion of what?
Secretin?
Yeah.
It doesn't digest anything. It's not a digestive secretion.
Okay.
It's regulatory. So it causes the pancreas to contract and release pancreatic juice, which contains a lot of bicarbonate.
How does that relate to like CCK being produced for protein and fats then?
So it's the trigger. It's not that those are, okay.
Oh.
Those chemicals don't digest, secretin and cholecystokinin don't digest those chemicals. It's when you have carbohydrate and acid coming into the duodenum, that triggers the release of secretin. And when you have fat and protein coming into the duodenum, that triggers the release of CCK. To make this make sense, let's finish it, okay? Bile emulsifies fats, which is why we need to release that in response to fat coming in. So it's not that the CCK does anything to digest fat, it's that it triggers the release of something that will help digest fat. Okay? Yeah. So CCK triggers gallbladder contraction, right? Bile is what we store in the gallbladder, and bile emulsifies fats. So bile doesn't digest fats, but it mixes it so it can be digested. So fat and protein coming into the small intestine trigger the release of a hormone that will then act on the gallbladder, so the gallbladder will secrete a chemical that will help digest fat. The bicarbonate is there for two reasons. One, to neutralize the acid, and to give us an alkaline environment so our other pancreatic enzymes will become active. Now I gotta get to the enzymes, okay? I gotta get to the enzymes because that's the last thing that'll be on your test on Monday that I haven't talked about yet, okay? At this point, guys, we're pretty much done with the regulatory aspect. We've covered everything we need to there. The rest of the entire GI tract is simply reflexive, okay? It can be upregulated and downregulated, but it's all reflexive, right? Enteric reflex. So to finish out your list of digestive enzymes, okay? From the gallbladder, you gotta tell me that you get bile. You gotta tell me that bile emulsifies fats. Okay? From the pancreas, and it's in the other slide, and I don't want to waste the time going to it. It's in the other set of slides where it talks about this. So I'm just gonna list them, you're just gonna have to write a little bit more. Okay? In the pancreas is the only organ that produces enzymes that can digest everything. Okay? The pancreas produces enzymes that can digest everything. So let's go down the list. The pancreas, pancreas, I don't know where that came from. The pancreas produces lipase, which we defined that earlier, so we don't need to do that again. The pancreas produces proteases. Now there are 3 proteases I'm going to list.
Protease, P-R-O-T-E-A-S-E.
Yeah. So your pancreatic proteases are chymotrypsin. And it's released in a zymogen form, so it's chymotrypsinogen. Trypsin, again, ogen, it's inactive form. And pro-carboxy peptidase. And here, instead of having inogen on the end, it gives it pro. So the actual peptidase is carboxypeptidase. So you got chymotrypsinogen, trypsin, and carboxypeptidase. Those are your three proteases from the pancreas. Got it? Okay. These are all inactive when they're secreted. Trypsin activates the other two. So once trypsin becomes active, it activates trypsinogen and procarboxypeptidase. So that begs the question, what activates trypsinogen? Okay. So for this, we need to understand that there is a protease produced in the small intestine. And this one is called enterokinase. Your book gives it a different name. I think it's just called enteropeptidase. Same thing. Okay.
Is that an E on the end?
It's an E, yeah, ACE. So this enzyme is actually at the brush comb border, which is the microvilli on the duodenal cells. Okay. So it's sitting there, and it activates trypsin. What? Small intestine. Enterokinase or enteropeptidase.
So those are
So they're the same thing. Your book uses the term enteropeptidase. I know we're out of time, but if you give me about 5 or 10 minutes, I can finish this in a way that makes sense. Right. Otherwise, I have to leave you hanging. Right. If you have to leave, I understand you have to leave. I'll finish recording. Okay. So let's see here. So this is a small intestine protease produced by unicellular glands in the small intestine. So it works like this, guys. The small intestine secretes these three. They don't become active until they get to the lumen of the small intestine. That's why we have this setup. Okay. Staying within the pancreas, the pancreas also produces things called nucleases. Nucleases break down DNA and RNA, which most people don't think about as a foodstuff. Okay. But you can get plenty of chemicals and plenty of energy out of DNA and RNA. So it produces nucleases. So lipase, nuclease, proteases, bicarbonate is its main secretion. And finally, that leaves us with amylase. Amylase, pancreatic amylase. And that is for starch digestion. Okay? So, nucleases, proteases, amylase, lipase. Those are all from the pancreas. And these are all produced in the acinar cells. Pancreatic acini. All of those enzymes that I've listed up there are produced in the acinar cells. Acini just mean sac-like cells. Sac-like cells. Now, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, lipase, protease, nuclease, amylase.
And the proteases. What's that?
Protease.
And all.
Lipase and protease.
Lipase, amylase, nucleases, and these three proteases.
Okay.
All come from the pancreas. Not enterokinase, that's a small intestine enzyme. Yeah, acinar, A-C-I-N-A-R. That means sac-like. Most of the pancreas has these little sac-like cuboidal cells that produce the digestion.